Well, the history of the family coming here was sometime around 1908, 1909, and they went into the retail business. They bought a building that was used to do horseshoes. What do they call it?
Blacksmith.
Yeah, they bought that building and they moved it forward on the main street, and they went into business with against many folks here. And at that time, there weren't too many Jews here. There was only one other family, the Schwartz family, that was here, and maybe the Sorkin family. The Sorkin family was also in the retail business. We were friendly competitors. And when they came here, there were three brothers. They originally came to Liberty and then Parksville and ended up in Livingston Manor. And they went in the retail business, and they sold everything from Victrolas to clothing to hats and everything like that. And they over the years they became fairly well accepted, and the Jews became fairly well accepted. They played a big part in that. More families moved here as time went on after the war. That's when folks out of New York City had come from Europe, and they didn't like New York City, so they came to Sullivan County, and they'd start a farm, and that farm would become a hotel. That's what happened with Grossinger's. Jenny Grossinger and her husband bought a farm, and they found out that they could make a better living by renting out rooms in the summer, and eventually built a couple of extra rooms, and it expanded into the Grossinger's, which was one of the primary hotels in the area. And that's what happened with a lot of them. We had something like 550 hotels in Sullivan County. We had 30 hotels around Livingston Manor. Just up the street, we had one, White Roll Lake, and Trojan Lake. Each one of them held around, one held around 400 people, the other about 200 people. And that thing expanded all around each sort of hamlet in the town, and it became our economy over the period of years. This goes back to the right after the war, when things started to move again for this area. In our case, the brothers had a very prosperous business up until 1926. And there was a fire in our building, in the Siegel building. And that's the time when the two brothers left my father and my mother and went to Staten Island. Uncle Ben went to California, as I understand. He used to come back originally. Every once in a while we'd get to see him. He and his living inmate, Sidonia. You know about Sidonia. Anyway, when they moved, they made an arrangement with my mother. She ended up with the building and rebuilt it and started the business again in one section of the store. And she carried novelties, mostly a summer business too. And novelties where people would come in and buy souvenirs with Livingston Manor on it and stuff like that. I was probably 14, 15 years old. I used to work and help my mother. And I also had a side job. I was a soda jerk in a what do you call them? A pharmacy that used to have the bar with the sodas and everything. So I worked for $5 a week, five days a week. But we had a good life here. We had a good school. Our kids went to school here. They all graduated here. They all are fairly prosperous and doing well. So that was the good part of it. They're trying to promote a decent life for Sullivan County by getting gambling here.
And how long have they been trying that?
That's 40 years, at least 40 years.
And who's for it and who's against it?
Well, they could never, the people that are for it could never get the legislature to come up with a bill. Como in the 80s, the bill has to go through two legislatures, when Como, President Como's father was governor here in the 1980s, he was for it and tried to get it through, and it went through one legislature, and the next year it was turned down, so that was the end of that.
Someone must have been against it.
Well, guys like Trump were definitely against it. He wasn't bashful about showing his attitude about keeping casinos out of Sullivan County because it was in direct competition to the Atlantic City, where he was a big promoter of that. But you know, we do have the racetrack here was established back. I don't know the year it was established, but that was a very successful operation, and it helped the economy some. And then they were able to get this part of where they can have just machines. They can't have actually gambling, so they have all kinds of machines there. And it's still working and still fairly prosperous. And the outfit that owns the Concord is going to move the racetrack and all that to the Concord site if they get the okay.
If they get the gaming.
Right.
But now there's a new stick in the mud with Orange County.
Yeah, that's the one. We have to wait and see what happens. We really don't know.
And that's all about financing?
All about financing. When the people that were going to finance some of these casinos in the county found out that Orange County is going to get it, they knew that they would have a limited business because they're going to come to Orange County. It's so much easier. They have buses and they have trains and all that nonsense. So we lost the financing at the Grossingers. They stepped out of it completely. But the Concord is one of the leaders that possibly could get a casino now. We'll know probably in maybe a month or 6 weeks. We're 5 brothers.
And they were Sammy,
Solomon.
It's your dad.
Right. There was Ben, and there was your grandfather Joe, and there was a rabbi in Canada that visited here once in a while. I remember him very slightly. I don't remember the name. Okay. And the 5th one, I don't know at all.
Never met him?
Never met him. But you have the picture of him. Did you see the picture?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, they all came to America at the same time?
I think so, yeah.
As young men or boys?
I never got into the way they got here or how they got here or the name. You know, when you're young, you don't think about those things.
Right.
But, so I have no idea how they got here or why they came up this far, you know, but it's a history. That's all there is to it. It came from Kiev, as I understand.
Right.
And I don't know if Siegel was their name there. I have no idea. I don't know if any of our relatives ever got any history of how they got here. Yeah. Stanley doesn't, I don't think, have any idea, does he?
Yeah, Stanley told me years ago that the name was Kropchenkov.
Oh, it could be.
Yes.
Yeah, it could be.
And that Joe always had problems with the name Siegel.
Oh, yeah?
Yes. And he always said, when I die, put my name Joseph Kropchenkov on the gravestone. Right. But, of course, they didn't.
Right.
Yeah. So the boys came over, the three of them stayed together.
Right, here.
Sammy, Ben, and Joe.
Right.
And opened up a couple of stores and then ended up in Livingston
Manor. That's
with the
right.
most successful one.
That's right.
And that lasted from about...
Well, it lasted until they had the fire. And then the partners left. Joe and Ben left. And during that time, my father had passed away. My father passed away in 1926.
What did your dad die from?
He had an accident and had a problem with his knee, whether it was cancer or whatever. Yeah. They wanted to remove it, and he objected to that. And consequently, they think it was cancer that finally got him after that accident. My father died. That left my mother with 3 kids. I was 6 or 7 years old, and my sister Marion was 3 years older, and Annie was probably 12, 13 years old. So my mother did a great job in at least keeping the family together, and she started the store all over again. So in 1926, she started the store, and when I went through school here, and went to college. She sold the business in 1938 or 1939. And I went to college for 3 years, and I was drafted after the third year for a year. I don't know if you know about the draft, that the war was a threat, and this country has the right prescription. So I was drafted after my third year of college, and was sent to Camp Croft, South Carolina.
That was 40?
That was in 41.
Before Pearl Harbor?
Right.
Right.
That was before Pearl Harbor.
Was there a build-up in the country before that?
Oh, yeah. And I remember I was in Hendersonville in December. I think it was December 7th, if I recall, that the Japanese hit Pearl Harbor. And we knew that year was not a year anymore. So our hearts really sank, but finally after 4.5 years I got out of the service. But I never went overseas. I was in a training camp where I was a cadre and an instructor, and teaching the new recruits how to read maps and shoot guns and all that nonsense.
What was your rank at that time?
I only got to be a corporal. I never wanted to be anything.
Okay, but then you decided to go to OCS.
Yeah, well, when the war was, they broke us up in South Carolina. I think it was in the invasion of Europe, when they needed personnel. They needed people to in the fighting range. So they broke us up and sent us to South Carolina to a training camp, and they put us in a medic group. And I figured if I'm going to go overseas, I may as well become an officer. So I put in for OCS, and they sent me to, I think it was Fort McPherson in Atlanta.
East Point.
Right, and I was waiting to be called for a class, and by that time, the war with Japan was over. The first
August of 45.
Right.
No, Europe was over.
Europe was over first.
That was in April.
Right. That's right. So anyway, when that happened, they set up a program where if you had so many points, if you were in a month, that was 1 point. So I had 49 points, and 48 was the limit. So I said, I'm getting out of here.
You made it by 1 point.
By 1 point,
okay,
yeah.
Good.
So that's when I got out in 1945, December 1945.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you came back to Livingston Manor.
Came back to Livingston Manor. But in the meantime, I met my wife, Marjorie.
Right. When did you get married?
In 1945.
Okay. So you got married before you came back?
You're right. We got married in Asheville, North Carolina. I've got pictures if you want some pictures.
Okay. We'll see them.
And my mother and my sister Annie were the only ones got down to our wedding. And
well, that was quite a trek in 1945.
It sure was.
Took the train, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So they came to the wedding, and I met Margie through the USO. I used to go up to Hendersonville and Asheville because they were in the mountains and reminded me of home, So on weekends, a lot of us soldiers would go up there, and that's how I met Margie in the USO.
And now, how old was Margie?
Margie was, I think she was 17 when I met her, or maybe 18. I'll often say they could have arrested me for taking on a minor. But anyway, she had lived in Chattanooga all her life, and she had sort of a tragic life too. Her mother and father died within 6 months when she was 12 or 13 years old. And her mother dying last had these brothers in Asheville, North Carolina, so that's how she ended up there. If her father had died last, she could have ended up in Chattanooga with his family, but the way it worked out, she ended up with her family. She went home and told her uncles that she met the man she's going to marry, but I always told her she never warned me.
Very
but
good.
we got married. We had a great life, and when the war was over, we were considering going, starting our life in Asheville. We went back there for a couple of weeks, and then we came back here, and we decided to do it here. In the meantime, the people that had leased the store that Mom had sold moved out, so we decided to go into business ourselves.
That was 46?
That was in 45.
45.
Right. 46, right.
Did she have any hesitation to come back here?
No, she had no hesitation.
A Southern girl?
She was a Southern girl, and she wasn't the typical Southern girl. She had very liberal ideas. We blended terrific. she was a great help. I was in the store, and I did the store pretty much myself, but whenever there was a crisis, she was always there to help. We used to run these sales in early 1950s. We brought in a consultant to tell us how to run an annual sale. They would come in and mark everything down. Every item in the store would be marked down. And I used to get so confused and everything. Margie'd come in and she'd take over. She knew exactly what she had to do, and I'd step aside and let her do it.
Now, has she ever had any previous retail experience?
No, but her father was in the retail business, but she never was in it. She was too young at the time.
And how about her uncles?
Well, her uncles also were in the business. He was Uncle Herman had a shoe store there.
Right.
And her father had a large department store. He started out as a bag, going house to house.
Yes.
When he came here in the early 80s. Margie's story is an odd story. Her father had a family of 4 kids when he was going to New York as a buyer for his store, and he met Margie's mother, who was a buyer for a store in Asheville, North Carolina. So they got married. So they hit it off, and they got married. And Margie was an accident, of course, and there was 16 years between when he had his last daughter, Gussie, and Margie. And they weren't too happy, of course, about the fact that there's going to be another kid, So she was sort of an extra for a while, but she finally got into the family, and it was very, very good. But Gussie, her oldest half-sister, they were real good buddies. And
was Livingston Manor, did it change after you came back from the war, from the time where you'd grown up?
Oh, well, it had grown. As I said, what had happened, we'd started having these hotels in the area, and it grew, and it made all these hamlets very prosperous around Sullivan County, and Livingston Manor was very prosperous at the time. When I had the store, we used to have 2 cops take care of the traffic on Main Street during the summer. It was so busy, and it's something that just grew naturally, and then it grew the other way as time went on.
So, but the boom period lasted about 10 years?
Yeah.
Mid-40s to mid-50s?
Well, it lasted, actually it started probably while I was in the Army. It started in the 40s, early 40s.
Yeah.
And it went through 1965 to 70 is when the hotel started going downhill. People, the airplane came in and they could go to Jamaica for the same cost of coming up here. And of course the clientele became a little more prosperous, and they sort of abandoned Sullivan County. So that's when the hotels started going down in the business.
And the railroads pulled out in the mid.
The railroads pulled out in 1957 was the last railroad train that went through here, and they used to, years ago, even starting in the 30s and the 40s, the hotels used to have chauffeurs that would go down to the station and they'd holler White Roll Lake, Trojan Lake, you know, and they would cart their clientele up to the hotel from the station, and that happened. That was the period from probably the 30s up to the late 50s.
So
yeah,
25 years.
Right, right. It's but they were all gradual changes, and somehow people in Sullivan County were never really prosperous, or they never got rich in the business they were in. But for instance, in my case, I had a business where I could put 3 kids through college and make a living, but never ended up really as a wealthy person.
Well, yours was much more of a year-round business than a seasonal.
Yes, yes. Well, I developed business people coming in, and I had a very moderate price store for clothing and stuff, anywhere from shoes to hats.
Right.
For the family.
But many of these places would close up in the winter, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Where would the owners go?
They'd go to Florida, right. And many of the hotel owners that had hotels here went to Florida and bought hotels back in those days. Yeah. And
they'd run the Florida hotels in the winter and come up here.
Well, they finally sold these and just concentrated in Florida, because Florida was building quite a business at that time. We had a good life in Livingston Manor, and Gary still lives in the area. He lives in Liberty. My oldest daughter Terry lives in Framingham, Massachusetts, and Shelley, who's visiting here now, lives in the Outer Banks in North Carolina. So they keep track of me pretty good, because Margie passed away 6 years ago, July 1st. And we were still having fun. We were the last ones on the dance floor, and we were golfers, and we were still having a lot of fun when she passed away. But it was a different ball game after that for me.
I always heard the loss of Margie affected you.
Oh, it's affected me a lot. I think of her all the time. Everything in this house is Margie. We planned this house with an architect for a year before we built it. Mm-hmm. And she knew what she had to do, and it's just an amazing thing that, you know, she had no training or anything. She knew what she had to do in most all cases, and without her, I'd be nothing.
Don't tell my wife.
Right. Yeah, she was quite a gal. She was a good mother. Well, I think we have a Siegel family as a musical family, and we had a music program in Livingston Manor when I went to school, and I decided I was going to be a music teacher. And when I went to Ithaca College, as I said, for 3 years, and after 3 years I was drafted, never went back. I got married and went into business. But Gary picked it up, and the Siegel family has always had music. Every family that we know has a piano, mm-hmm. and they all took lessons, and it's just a great adjunct to everyone's life. It's something, if you do music, you can use it enjoy it your whole life, you know.
What instrument did you start out with?
Well, I started out with the saxophone, but when I went to college, that wasn't considered a symphonic instrument, so I took the clarinet. That's when I took up the clarinet back in the old days.
And you still play?
I'm still playing the clarinet. Well, we have a Calhoun Center band that does 10 concerts a year in the summertime. It's from 8 to 9, and it's a community kind band. It's they do marches and all modern stuff, so it's a real nice thing. Music program here. His music teacher got him involved when he was 12 years old, so we used to take him over to that Calhoun Center band every Wednesday, and we'd sit and listen while he participated with the rest of the band. So it's got a long history in our band, in our family. And I had the store in Livingston Manor for 1945 to 1982. At that time, I went into politics, which I never mentioned to you. I was a supervisor of the town and also legislator of the county. So I didn't have time for stuff like the band at that time, but as soon as I retired from my politics, I joined the band. So I've been in it about 20 years. But Gary's been in it 40 years. And there's a 10-week period where we rehearse starting in April. So it keeps me busy.
And now your grandson Max was in
Max, so Gary and myself and Max, the 3 generations have been in it. All last summer Max played, but Max moved to New Paltz, so he's not active in it this year. But he does come up once in a while and play in it.
And what instrument does he play?
He plays the trumpet, and Gary plays the trumpet, and I play the clarinet.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've missed that.
And you know, when I came back from the service, my sister Ann had a little band, and we had a Catholic camp up the street on the White Road Lake Road, and they used to have dances for the kids every Wednesday. And Annie got this job, so she convinced me to play with her. So about 4 or 5 summers, I played clarinet with her in the jazz band so these kids could come up and dance every Wednesday. Mm-hmm. So it's always played a part in my life too.
Did you ever think you'd live into your 90s?
No, I never gave it a thought.
Yeah, it just happened.
I thought, really, being 7 years difference between my wife and myself, I figured she'd be the one holding the bag. But she passed away. She had ovarian cancer, and it spread, and they just couldn't control it anymore. So that was the end. But I always felt that she would be the first one to go, not me. But here I am.
Did you discuss it with her?
No, never discussed it. Never talked.
You just figured that in your own mind.
Yeah. Well, I always had a hunch. You know, my father died when he was 42 years old. He had 3 kids. And I was following in his footsteps. I had 2 girls, and then I had Gary. And I always feared getting through 42. I look back at it now, it's so silly, really. But I always had the fear that maybe I was in his pattern. But here I am, doubling that. Well, I attribute that to my wife too, because whatever we did, she always insisted, whatever we do, you do in moderation. And that's the way we lived, and whether it was a food or whatever. The only thing, she did smoke until late in life, but she had cancer when Shelley was I don't know, 11 or 12 years old. And she had a breast removed at that time. You know, they didn't have much choice back then. You either took the whole thing or you took a little piece. She said, no way. Yeah, she decided she was going to have the radical mastectomy. She had the whole thing with the arm and everything taken off. And she beat cancer for 40 years. Yeah.
And it was a good 40 years.
It was a great 40 years.
Do you think there'll ever be anyone else for you?
No, never.
Never?
Never.
Is that because your children won't let anybody come around?
Well, you could never get used to any other pattern after the 63 years. You have a pattern and a wonderful wife and all. You can't replace that. And I wouldn't expect to at my age. When she died, I was 88 or 89.
Yeah.
You know, so where am I going? But I've got the family around me. They came, they helped me out and keep me going, and it's been good. It's been good. I've done a lot of things in my life. I've always been part of the community. I was in the Chamber of Commerce. I was the president of the chamber for many years, and as a citizen of Livingston Manor, I wanted to do my part. I also was on the school board for 20 years, from 1950 to 1970 or 71. I was on the school board, and I helped shape a lot of things in Livingston Manor. And as time went on, I went into politics, and there were certain things I wanted to get done for the county. One of the things were, I don't know if you've seen the covered bridge down here. It's just off 17. That bridge was falling into the river when I became a supervisor. And one of the things I had in mind, we got to save that bridge. And so when I became supervisor, I was able to convince the rest of the Board of Supervisors to come up with $250,000. And we hired a guy from Vermont who originally built bridges like that, and he rebuilt that bridge. He never used any nails. It's got pegs, you know.
Just like the original.
Not like the original bridge. That's one of my legacies. And the other one is the recycling plant we have here in Livingston Manor. When I was supervisor, the board turned down a $1 million project to have these. What did I say? That's the recycling. I have a senior moment every once in a while.
You're entitled to it.
Anyway, they decided to turn down the program of recycling plants in different areas of the county. So I got together with the administrator of the county. I said, why don't we put in one and see how it works? So I was able to get the first one in Livingston Manor. It's about 3 miles from here, where we do all our recycling. We take all our bottles and the papers and everything. And after that, the county, they opened others in the county like that. So I feel that's sort of my legacy. And I'm still very busy, you know, with when I was Rotarian. I had the store and was very friendly with everybody. I don't know if you ever heard of Lazar Kaplan, but Lazar Kaplan was a diamond cutter who came to the United States during World War I, and he somehow never could get back to Europe. So he became a citizen of the United States. And in 1930, either 29 or 30. He had this Junker diamond. You probably heard that you have to study a diamond like for a year or 2 years, and then you hit it one time and split it. So he had this Junker diamond. It was the third largest diamond in as I understand it at the time, and he was very successful in splitting that diamond. I guess he became a millionaire. And he lived in New York, but he bought a summer home here in Livingston Manor up in Lou Beach, and he used to come into the store, and I finally convinced him to become a Rotarian. And he was 79 years old when he became a Rotarian. He became very active in the youth programs that we had that Rotary runs. As time went on, he was in Rotary until he was like 101 years old, and he became very
22 years.
Yeah, and Rotary gave him a 100th birthday. And as a result of being a Rotarian and being interested in the youth program, he left a good share of his fortune in a
trust
to help Livingston Manor youth out of Livingston Manor and Roscoe schools. It's about $1 million and a half. So, and I handle all that right now. I still handle it. He was a real staunch, opinionated guy. He had to know how to handle them, you know. And he had a son who's also became part of the fund. He's on the board. We work with the board, and his son recently moved out of the New York area, and he's not active anymore. This fund goes on, and the Kaplan Foundation, I just sent out the checks, over 50 checks, anywhere from $500 to $3,000, helping kids with their tuition out of Livingston Manor. Mm-hmm. We also give $1,000 to the library. We give $1,000 to other local organizations. So that's something that I feel I was sort of responsible for, bringing him into the
directly.
area. Yeah, right.
And you were the link.
I was the link.
Was he your mentor?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
He led the way.
He led the way. He was a great guy.
Have your children been a great source of pride to you?
Oh yeah, every one of them. I love them all. They're great kids. They're great kids.
Did you ever think that that in your elder years, that your children would be your standard bearers, your source of strength?
I hope they don't have to really take care of me. I want to be on my own till the end. But they're there for me whenever I need them. And my daughter-in-law and my daughter-in-law and son-in-laws are all great people.
Well, you've outlived just about everybody you know.
I know. I told you that we had a partnership that bought 600 acres. There was Mike Friedman, he was a lawyer. There was Vic Shaver, he had a trucking business, and there was who was the fourth one? Jim Farrell. Did I mention him?
Yes.
He was in the insurance business. They're all gone. All my buddies are gone. But we used to have such a great time. We used to have such great parties. And it was just a great life. Well, can't.
Well, how do you fill that void?
I don't fill it anymore. I just go from day to day. You can't fill it.
Do you look back a lot? You reflect back on life?
Yeah, I reflect back, but that doesn't help anything. I think I've got albums and albums. I say I should pull them out and look at them, but I don't.
Well, I once heard this saying: everybody's got to have three things in life. You got to have something to look back on, something to look forward to, and something to do today.
Right. Well, the things I do today is what keeps me going.
Yeah.
As I said, I chair this finance thing for the Rotary every year, and this Kaplan thing. And I sit down at the computer at 12 at night, and I do all the work that I have to do. I go to bed around 2 o'clock every morning, every day. I get in the bed and I read for 20 minutes, and then I'm done. but those things keep me busy. If I didn't have that, I think I'd go nuts.
Yeah.
Right. But sooner or later, I've got to turn that over to somebody. I'm not as agile as I used to be.
Well, your memory and your articulation are amazing.
Yeah, right.
Like I said, when you try to find somebody your age to relate to compare, they're all dead.
Yeah, I know.
So
I know.
I mean, the people that I try to compare you to are their 70s or 80s.
That's right.
And they're all feeble and out to pasture or dead or.
Yeah.
And Lee, you're just amazing.
Well, I don't know how long it's going to last, but I'm ready for whatever happens.
Well, people watching.
Yeah.
Young people, they want to know what's the secret.
Well, the secret is moderation.
Yeah.
I really, we used to. Margie and I would have a drink every night. We went to Las Vegas once and ended up with a bottle of
Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels.
Okay.
And she became a Jack Daniels fan. And we'd sit and have a drink every night before dinner. And we never got, drunk, but we'd have a drink, one drink, or maybe she'd have two, maybe. I always said she really owned part of Jack Daniels with all the money she spent. We went out there one day, we went through their plant. It was really something.
In Tennessee?
Yeah, right.
Walker?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They have these warehouses with barrels and barrels and barrels of stuff. Yeah. The only thing with Margie, she smoked too much. She finally gave it up.
And you never smoked?
Never smoked.
Yeah. But
that's probably a secret too. One of the secrets that helps.
But you certainly were subjected to secondhand smoke.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But obviously didn't affect you.
Well, look at my brother-in-law, Cy. He lived till 98 and lived with Annie, who smoked till she was 93. And in the car and in the house. So it's an individual thing, that secondhand smoke. I think it's something that surely can affect some people, but doesn't affect everybody.
How old did your mom live to?
How old?
Yeah.
When she lived here?
No. When did your mom die? How old was she?
She died in 1957, and she was in her late 60s.
Yes.
So both my parents didn't have longevity.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And both my sisters lived a long life too.
Yeah.
I think Marion was in her 80s and Annie was in her 90s when she died.
I once heard this saying: stress has killed more men than bullets.
Yeah, right.
Would you say you've lived a stressful life, a stress-free life?
Well, I've had my stressful moments. There's no doubt about it, but I've seemed to throw them off without too much problem.
Well, living with moderation can certainly help that.
Absolutely.
And nobody's going to say you ever got stressed out in your commute to work.
Right. Well, we bought this lot because it was close to the business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're like 2 minutes away. And we bought it and put it up on a hill because of the flooding we always had in the main street in Livingston Manor. And we used to have these floods. In 1969 was the bad flood. And what we would do was open the back door and the front door and just let the water go through. And we'd have to pick everything up, you know, like 3 feet from the floor. And boy, that was stressful.
Were the wooden floors?
Yeah. Well, they had the vinyl finish, you know.
But didn't they take forever to dry out?
Oh yeah, it did take. Yeah, we had to scrub them, you know, leave a mud residue, so we'd have to clean it up. But that happened maybe once every 10, 12 years. But now Main Street gets flooded over. They've almost had a flood almost every other year. It's and they are working on trying to alleviate some of the problems. But the flooding was always a stressful kind of thing. Trying to keep up with the modern technology, but it's tough.
How many 95-year-old people do you think use a computer?
I don't know.
I know people in their 60s.
Yeah, right.
I don't mess with those things.
Yeah, I know a lot of people don't. Well, I got into it about 12, 14 years ago, you know, when it was still fairly new.
Yeah.
And I do all my stuff. On Quicken, I write all my checks on Quicken and take care of my accounts. I take care of the Kaplan account. I take care of the Rotary list. Like I have a list from year to year, you know, on that Rotary promotion to make money, you know. See, I have these senior moments.
Well, if you're not going to have a senior moment at 95,
yeah, right.
When are you going to have them?
Right. So anyway, I have that all on my computer, and it's very stressful sometimes when you lose some of that the computer.
Well, Holly and I are going to be here for your 100th birthday party.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I hope I'll be here.
Oh yes, you'll be here too.
I don't know.